That's how easy love could be.
Okay, you don't mind if I use that for our cold open, dude?
I don't care.
Now that he's got his hair pretty.
Yeah. Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Traveler. We're back in the saddle after our 2024 predictions, Paul, of what's going to happen to the travel industry in 2024. We had 60 predictions you and I went through the first 4 weeks of the year, and now we're ready to rumble with what's going to happen the rest of the year.
Let's push this forward and see how those predictions come as we go into this year, but let's keep pushing with all the great things going on in travel now.
This week, Paul, I found some really cool things about airfare prices to Europe.
Now's the time.
Now is the time to travel to Europe, and especially to make your airline ticket reservations. I was going through and checking a lot of activities for all the major cities in Europe, and I was amazed at the prices. It's obvious that the airlines have put in all these new flights, Paul.
Some bigger planes that
Bigger
we've talked
planes,
about. Yep.
Bigger planes, more flights to cities they've never even flown to before. And now they're sitting there in the winter with empty seats. Yep. Obviously, those seats fill up in the summertime when everybody's traveling to Europe. But right now, there's this perfect little window from now through about the first 2 weeks of May that we found some great deals. I'm going to share with you the first headline of this week's Weekly Traveler, which reads, Amazing flight prices to Europe right now. Checking the airline prices to Europe, I found prices from Omaha, a close airport to us, to Rome, $695 round trip. Can you believe that?
You can't get to LA for that.
Or
right
Atlanta,
now. So,
that's right.
I mean, that's the reality is the opportunity now to go international is cheaper than what it costs to go to a business meeting that's stateside. So you got to jump on this.
Listen to these other prices. Paris, $626. Vienna, $709. London, $566. $660 to Frankfurt, $638 to Amsterdam, $789 to Athens. That's an amazing price. If you can travel between now and the first week of May or so, you ought to jump on these prices, even to go over for 3 or 4 days.
Well, and you're going to get savings with the hotels because there's excess capacity there. So it's a great time to get a great value. And I think to that, I've been constantly watching for some clients in June and July going over to Amsterdam, and those have not come down under $1,700 round trip. So you're able to almost get a 3-for-1 right now on economy class.
Headline number 2 in this week's Weekly Travel Alert, sponsored by Executive Travel, reads, Business class airfare sale to Europe is almost 50% off summer prices right now. Now, I know this is music to your ears when I say business class on sale, but normally when you say business class to Europe, you're talking $6,000, right?
At least, if not double that when you get to peak season.
Now, get this. I looked Omaha to Athens, $3,400. Paris, $3,078. Rome, $2,999. I found a week in February. It's $2,999 round trip.
So we're going in February.
Let's go in February. Frankfurt, $3,070. Vienna, $3,246. Ladies and gentlemen, these are amazing deals. And if you're thinking about making an airline reservation this spring, you should do it right now because we saw a window back in November, didn't we, where they were about this price, and then it seemed like it went way up. And
they
now
did jump, yeah. They were almost doubled for a little bit, and then it's kind of been a roller coaster. I think a lot of it's just coming down to, are they getting these new airplanes into their fleets and certified, and more importantly, are they getting their pilots that they're upgrading from smaller planes to the larger planes through their certification process? Because I know that can take a couple months to get a pilot certified to go to a larger or different airplane.
You bet. We've got a friend that's a pilot on United Airlines, and he's always telling us all the activity.
He's going from the 787 to the 777 right now, so he's in Denver for a month doing the training. So the nice thing is we know that they want to do it right. And as his point was in a text to me last week, is before they put him in the air in one of their real $200 million aircraft, they want to make sure he knows what he's doing. So that's good for us as well.
And so do I. Headline number 3 in this week's Weekly Traveler, sponsored and hosted by Executive Travel. If you have to take a short trip to Europe, the airlines will zing you with double the price for your airline ticket. Paul, I couldn't believe this, Paul. While I was checking out the low prices, the $600, $700 round trip prices to Europe, I said, well, what if I'm a business traveler and just want to go over for 2 days, do a deal, and come back coach, okay? Wow. So I found an 8-day trip that was $697 that was from Omaha to Rome. Then I said, what if I stay 4 days, okay? Well, of course, one of those is flying overnight to Rome, and then you have 2 days for business, and then 1 day flying back. It jumps to $1,355.
Almost double.
Yeah, and if I stay just for 3 days to do a business deal, it's $1,643. So the airlines basically have said, if you're a vacation traveler, we're going to give you this $700 deal. If you're a business traveler, want to just go over there, stay a day or 2 or 3, double it.
Yeah.
And they're basically discriminating from business perspective, saying if we can get more money out of a business traveler with a short trip, because who's going to vacation for 3 days?
Yeah.
You're going to be gone for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So
it
I
goes
found
into
it
that
fascinating.
other people's money syndrome where, the business traveler, that's not coming out of their pocket. So they're a little less concerned about where to your point, that vacation traveler, that's going against their personal credit card. And so, but what this actually does, or a mindset that people might want to take would be, let's go do that business trip, but then let's also relax and enjoy. And that's tough for us as Americans. That's not usually our style, but maybe that's something that we should put more consideration into. Is if we're going to be there, why not actually see it and explore it? I always go back to all these meetings we have to travel for, and we go to these great cities. You fly in, you do 2 or 3 days of meetings. You might get out for a dinner one night that's tied to that meeting, but you never have time to actually explore the city. So why are we traveling for these meetings? May as well be doing them here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I recall a meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona one February where you and I were there for a 2-day meeting, and it was, it was like 80 degrees there and it seemed like 80 below zero here. Yeah, you and I spent our 2 days in the hotel.
Yep.
And we might as well have been in Chicago.
Yeah, it didn't matter where we were.
It'd probably be cheaper in Chicago. But anyway, there's a term for the business trip tied with a leisure trip called bleisure. That's kind of a new term that they started 10 or so years ago. And we see, and we're hearing the airlines say that more and more people are tying that business meeting with vacation or leisure meeting, and then the second half inviting their spouse to come.
And to this would actually be a benefit for doing that, because there's going to be some savings to the company, and then you've got the company that's paying for your airline ticket, so you're ultimately just having to pay for your spouse to travel with you if you want to have them join, and great opportunity.
I think we need to be a little bit more European, and America is so intense business-wise, where seems like the Parisians and the rest of Europe is kind of like, take it a little bit easier and enjoy life a little bit. Maybe we ought to spell the roses.
We've seen that very directly as we've been working on a project over in Europe, and there's no urgency in how they approach things. It's when they get to it, they get to it. So that might be good for us to be able to relax every now and then.
The fourth headline in this week's weekly travel alert, sponsored by Executive Travel, reads, your next flight to Europe may include a train connection, Paul, instead of a flight connection. As I was looking at flights, I go, hey, I want to fly to Brussels through Amsterdam on KLM.
Okay.
Normally you'd fly Chicago, Amsterdam, and then connect to Brussels on a flight. Well, guess what? The flight's about 30 minutes long. So on the airline manifest that I was looking through, several of them showed the connection with a train.
Okay.
So you have a train connecting instead of a flight connection. Americans aren't used to that.
It's been part of that green initiative, and I know they've been talking about it in France here regarding
Right.
anything that's less than, I want to say, 2.5 hours.
Yes.
They're not going to allow for those flights. So I think that's going to be a significant change. And to your statement, that is not something that, especially those of us in the Midwest, if you're in the East Coast, you might be taking a train from New York to DC or something like that, or Boston. But yeah, no, I couldn't tell you. I have been on Amtrak, but it's probably been 20 years, and that was for a fun trip to a football game somewhere, I'm sure. So that will be something that we'll have to get accustomed to.
It reminded me of 20 years ago, there was an airline called America West Airlines. And if you said, I want to travel from Omaha to Scottsdale, they actually would fly you to Phoenix, and then there was a bus connector to a hotel in Scottsdale, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But who wants to sit at an airport for 2 hours waiting for a bus to get you for a 30-minute ride to Scottsdale? But once again, I think Americans, we're going to see a new world out there traveling, especially to Europe, especially for short flights within a country, like in France, or along that Amsterdam area, or in Copenhagen and other areas. So a different world. The fifth headline in this week's Weekly Travel Alert reads, when an airline says they're going green, it basically means to get out your wallet. The airlines say, hey, we're going to all be green by 2050.
Carbon neutral.
Neutral by 2050. That seems to be the date that they picked out.
And I think that's funny because everybody that's making these commitments won't be involved in the airlines in 2050, so they're ultimately making blank promises.
Yeah, well, they're saying we have good intentions. And the other thing is now when you make reservations, you can also say, do you want to fund the carbon neutral initiative? Do you want to pay this much extra?
And in the online booking tools, it's often showing you what the different carbon offsets are going to be, as far as if you take these flights, this is how much carbon is going to be impacted. So you can make decisions based on that, and that information is now there. So we'll see now how this plays into, because ultimately this becomes a decision from the corporation's perspective on if they want to pay to offset those expenses. Because
they probably need that in a policy manual, their travel policy. They should probably tell their travelers, are you enabled to pay that additional offset or not? That's a good point you make.
But I think another key to this is, the airlines have jumped on this, but it's just as big with your rental car and your hotel. I think that's where we don't know where this is going to end up, because really when you travel, everything that you're doing is going to have an impact. So the airlines are jumping on the initiative up front, and we'll see what happens with the other aspects of travel.
You bet. The other thing that I've noticed is right now it's kind of a voluntary. You can volunteer to donate, but my guess is very soon it's going to be mandatory that you fund.
Tax of some sort.
One more tax on that big tax roll that you and I talk about all the time. We're going to have to print that out sometime and read 16 rows of taxes on that flight, your next flight you take, and also that next car rental you take. That'd be fun to talk about. The last item, the headline in this week's Weekly Travel Alert reads, I have changed my mind and now like the jumbo shampoo bottles in my hotel shower.
Uh-oh.
Okay? Now, I've hated those things. I always like the little ones, but now my sight's getting so bad I can't read if it says shampoo on it or if it reads conditioner or body wash. So now they put these big hunkin' bottles in the shower with the pump, so you can pump it. And actually, some of them are pretty good quality shampoos and stuff. And I can read the sign a little bit easier. So they've converted me. I like it.
Well, I think it also goes towards getting rid of some waste. I mean, it saves them some money. So there's a positive for the hotels. But it also gets rid of somebody's there for one night. They use the mini bottle and they don't take it home, so it just gets tossed. So I think there's multiple benefits. Now, my pet peeve, and this happens just this last trip that I took, was when the pump does not work.
Oh, no.
Now all of a sudden you've got this big bottle and you're having to screw off the top and dump it in your hands and you're making a mess. So there's still a downfall that's a pet peeve of mine that was just a recent one that I hit. But in the long run, I do think that it's a good direction that the hotels have gone.
In my laundry room, Paul, one day I opened one of the doors, okay, and that's where I threw all the little shampoo bottles. I bet there were 200 in there, and we finally found a place with the city mission.
Like I say, the city
that
mission
could
will
use
gladly take those.
all those, and so we could get those. And I would encourage people to do that if you've got extra shampoo bottles. At the local city mission would be a great place for that to take place. That's it for this week's edition of the Weekly Traveler, sponsored by Executive Travel. I'm Steve Glenn.
I'm Paul Glenn. Please like, subscribe, share, and add any comments or questions that we can address in a future episode. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.